Welcome to Burnt Bridge. Today we're going to do something new. We're going to start sprinkling in some of these sober sleepover episodes so that we can just talk about sobriety in a more casual way. We're still going to do our guests and everything like that, but we're going to sprinkle in some of these where we talk about specific topics that have to do with sobriety, a little bit more of the stuff that I've done on TikTok just because I like to yap, and that's just something about me. But today's episode, we have some anonymous stories. We have a Q&A segment, and unfortunately, I am going to do a pop culture segment, and that's just going to be something that we're all just going to have to deal with. And if you don't want to listen to it, you can just skip ahead. And we're going to talk about our topic of the day, which is being sober curious and what that means and the whole sober curious movement. I unfortunately was not one of the lucky ones who ever had the chance to be sober curious, but I actually had to be sober not by choice, but some people are, a lot of people are, it's a big thing, and we're going to talk about it. But first and most importantly, we're going to do our sober shout outs of the week. These are some more we've gotten in from TikTok from August. Clayton is celebrating 3 months on August 10th, or I guess celebrated 3 months on August 10th. Everyone clap, everyone clap. John, okay, I can't even do this math. John has been sober since August 16th of 1994. 30 years. Holy shit. Holy shit.
Maybe 31?
Could be.
31 years.
Wow. Either way, that's longer than I've been alive, and that's fucking incredible. Michael B. is celebrating 1 year on the 18th. Incredible. Hardest 365 of your life. And Alex celebrated 30 days on August 5th. Congratulations, everyone. That's humongous, and we're all incredibly proud of you. Now, here's the segment that I will implore you to skip over if you so choose, but because of who I am as an individual, I will need to be discussing it ad nauseum. And that's going to be our Lord and Savior, Taylor Allison Swift. Yesterday went on a podcast, and I just felt like, wow, I also have one of those. And we're just connected in every single way to announce her new album. And I just have some things to say about that. And what I would like to say is this. Never in my life as a Swiftie have we ever been fed in such a way. It was the most personal thing I've ever seen her do. It was so incredible. She talked about getting her master's back, and I will tie this into my sobriety because I was telling my therapist about this today. The story of her getting her master's back makes me so emotional because it reminds me so much of all of our plights in life. I feel like just now I'm kind of re-owning myself and who I am as a person for the first time, and kind of reclaiming my life after I really fucking lost it. I really lost the plot there for 3 years with my alcoholism, and I think her story is one of perseverance and fortitude, and also just she basically was just so petty that she did these re-records and no one fucking wanted her to do it, and she did it anyways because it was that important to her. And if there's one thing Taylor Swift has fucking taught me, there's one thing she's taught me, and she's taught me so many things, it's that to not be afraid to be seen trying, I think is such an important lesson for the bitches like me who just all I've ever done is try, and everybody wants you to feel embarrassed for trying, and they want you to feel cringy for trying, and she just has become a billionaire from trying. And I don't know if there's ethical billionaires, but I'm just going to be a fan of hers until the day that I die, I'm pretty sure, and that's just going to be that. And also, she's taught me that you should never allow anyone to make you feel silly for the things that you care about. And I just think that's a really fucking important lesson. And it's really just, the whole thing has genuinely sent me into perhaps a state of mania, the likes of which I've never seen. Yesterday, I felt like I was fully on drugs. I was texting so much about it that my hands genuinely began to cramp in a physical sense. And I just I would be remiss if I didn't use my platform to speak on what everyone else is speaking on. I think it would just be really like a lost cause if I didn't. And I'm glad that if you stuck around and listened to this part, I really appreciate you. And if not, you can start listening again. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Okay, now we're going to go into anonymous stories. So I asked people on my TikTok to comment if they would be okay with me sharing this on the podcast, some anonymous stories from their addiction. Now, if you go to my TikTok, you'll see plenty of my own stories. Like, for instance, when I, in a relapse, ordered a Chili's triple dipper to my house. It was obviously the Big Mouth Bites, the Chicken Crispers, and the Southwestern Egg Rolls. And I was eating it hammered, but then I couldn't finish it because I was truly just full of alcohol. And I passed out in my bed and pissed my pants. I pissed my pants and I pissed my bed. And the problem with that is that I realized that I had done it in the moment, and I chose to remain in that bed for the remainder of the evening. I went straight back to sleep and slept in the urine and woke up in piss in piss with the Chili's triple dipper by my side. And that's one of the light stories, I'd say, that I tell on my TikTok. But these are from some followers, and I greatly appreciate everyone being so vulnerable as to share them. This one says, one time I got so drunk, I fell backwards onto my glass tabletop, broke it, and glass shards sliced into my butt, so I was bleeding. I proceeded to stand up like nothing happened, lay on my couch, and pass out to wake up to a permanently blood-stained couch. I have a lot of follow-up questions to that story. I want to know what glass shards sliced into my butt means specifically. If it means like just into like the cheek itself. If it means like, what do we mean? And what do we mean? And what's crazy is like a lot of these stories had to do with like really severe injuries as a result of being hammered. And I think that's beautiful, honestly. I really do. Thank you so much for sharing. I really enjoyed that. Okay, the next one is, I was up for 5 days, did another shot of an illicit substance, and all of a sudden I thought people were after my family, so I got behind the wheel to drive to them, stopped to fill up with gas, got paranoid in the gas station. A stranger asked if I needed a ride. He brought me to a clinic. I ran out. Cops were called. Paramedics were holding me down. Got injected with a sleepy med and woke up in a mental institution. And to that I would say, who hasn't done that? Truly, who has not just casually stayed up for 5 days, had an excursion, and ended up against their will in a mental institution? I personally have had that experience, not exactly, but I have woken up in a mental institution with not fully being sure how things led to that. I remember one time they 5150'd me, and if you're not familiar with what that means, it's when they deem you a danger to yourself. And when they put me in a ambulance, and I was like, I really don't need to be in this ambulance right now. And they were like, you do actually need to be in the ambulance. And so I'm like strapped to this gurney, but like I had honestly kind of sobered up at this point. And the EMT was looking at me, and he was like, so how, do you just drink a lot? And I was like, yeah, I mean, mind you, I'm like fully strapped to a gurney, so I could like talk to him like normal. I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess so. I guess that's why we're here. And he just tried to casually speak to me as he drove me to the psych ward, in which I stayed for the next at least 72 hours. So we've all been there, at least the best of us have. And then this one I have a lot of questions about, and I guess we'll just go into it. I ran over a man that tried to shoot me at 22. Unfortunately, I wish I was lying when I say that wasn't the only time someone tried to shoot me. Right. And of course, I want to know, like, how significant the running over was. did he succeed in shooting you any of the times? And also, I'm so sorry to you for that experience. Thank you everyone so much for these anonymous stories. They've really given me a lot of joy, and also I recognize the severity of them, of course, but as a person who's been through similar things, I think we can all laugh a little bit about it. Okay, now I want to get into the topic of today's segment. This is the idea of being sober curious. This is also tailored to people who are kind of in the contemplative stage of sobriety, where it's like, and I did experience this, where it's like, do I need to get sober? What does that even look like? Will my life even go on if I have to do that? I know I need to change, but I'm not sure like how to go about it. And what I want to say about sobriety as a whole is this. I think that it's really hard to know where to start. I never knew where to start. I was like, I could go to a meeting. That sounds fucking terrible. And there's going to be a bunch of old people there and they're going to lecture me about my life and I don't want to do it. First of all, that's not what meetings are like. They're actually really pleasant, and it's wonderful to be in a room full of people where like your craziest story is some of their tamest stories, and there's just zero judgment. And I think when you're first getting sober, there's a lot of people in your life that you feel at least are treating you with a lot of judgment, and they're not understanding how you're fucking up your life so bad and how you're just like continuing to drink through it. At least that was my experience. And when you go into like a room of other alcoholics, they're actually going to be the only people on earth who aren't going to judge you in that way, because they fucking get it and they've been there too. So first of all, meetings aren't as scary as they seem, but that's not also the only thing that you can do at that point. For me, for the first 2 years I tried to get sober, I thought of sobriety as a punishment for my addiction. I thought that I like literally was going to be so terrible to be sober that I was like, this is what the universe is making me fucking do for how much I've been drinking. And as soon as I shifted my mindset from, this isn't a punishment, this is an active choice that I'm making, because the truth is, like, no matter what the consequences you're facing in your life are, being sober is a choice every single day. So that is something that you're doing, and no one's truly can't force you to be sober. You're the only person who can make that call at the end of the day. So when I started viewing as like kind of an empowering choice I was making to better my own life, that changed things. And I think I didn't know that I deserved a better life for a while, but I just knew I couldn't keep going the way that I was going. And what I want to say about that is, I think it's thinking about, what does sobriety grant me that continuing to drink can't? Sobriety offers me the ability to give myself a chance to be successful in my mental health, in my relationships, in my career, in my, role as a mother of a dog. Like, there's so many things that I can be a better version. Every single aspect of my life I can be a better version of when I'm sober, because it's not just about being drunk, it's also about being hungover, because you can think back on how many days of your life have been wasted and how essentially useless I was any day that I was violently hungover. And to this, I'm going to go on a slight feminist tangent, but this is applicable to anyone, male or female, with a distrust of government and and authority, generally speaking. It is of my personal belief that sobriety is an act of rebellion, because I cannot be an activist. I cannot be really aware of what's going on. Like, I think a lot of times I drink over the atrocities of the world and paying my fucking taxes and watching, the government rip rights away from people constantly. I remember 2016, there was a cold day in November where I just said, I'm getting fucked up. And I got fucked up because I was like, there's nothing I can do about this. I feel so powerless. Like, I'm getting drunk because I can't deal with the reality that we're living in. And that's what they fucking want. I honestly believe that's why prohibition was repealed, is because drunk people and hungover people are easier to control than people of a clear mind and spirit and body. And that's on period, honestly. Especially as women. Like, if you just look at the 1950s, like the benzodiazepine epidemic of the 1950s with like housewives, we were easier to control physically and spiritually and mentally if we were fucked up. And I think that's still true to this day. So it, as a rebel at heart, it helps me a lot to be sober, to think of it as rebelling against the powers that be that I vehemently disagree with. Thank you. But more on the choosing to think about it in terms of how this can benefit. And this goes out to like the sober curious people. I hear a lot of like, when do you know if you need to be sober? And it's like, right, I think we could answer that with a number of things, but when do you, like, it's more of like, do you want to be sober? And what are the things that a sober life could afford you that something when you're drinking could not? And I think for me, what's hard about getting sober initially is that all the emotions come back, all the feelings come back, and they come back stronger. I heard it said recently that drinking is a deferment plan for trauma. It's something that you do when you're not ready to deal with things that have happened in your life. And when you get sober, it's like you're finally at a place of strength to deal with that. Now, it didn't fucking feel like that when I got sober, I'll be honest. I was feeling the weakest to deal with any of my trauma. But the problem is, the more I drank, the more trauma or hardship I imparted on myself in my life. So it was just kind of like piling up rather than pushing it down the line. It was just adding to it. And at a certain point, someone told me, that's just going to continue to happen. But if you get sober right now, you can stop that trajectory. And I think that's true, because I was like, how am I supposed to fucking deal with all the things, not only that have happened in my life, but that I've done in my addiction? I've hurt so many people. I've hurt myself. I've ruined relationships. Like, people fucking don't want to speak to me right now. How am I supposed to even deal with that? But the sooner you deal with that, the less people you have to face is the reality and the truth of that. But I think when you're sober curious, like, some of those consequences aren't necessarily as severe yet. And when you first get sober, it is true that the feelings come back truly so strongly and with such a vengeance that it's tough. And that's why relapse is so common in the first, weeks and months of sobriety. However, after a certain amount of time, this amount of time varies person to person, these things become increasingly easier to deal with and to handle, because when you think about when you're drunk, you're so quick to strong emotion, to anger, to tears, whatever it is. When I've been sober for a while, I have more of a rational mentality than when I'm not. Now, am I a rational person? No, of course not. You guys have heard me. There's not really a rational bone in my body, but there's even less so when I'm drinking. And I think that's something that sobriety affords us, is an ability to deal with hardship in a way that is more bearable. And there's this illusion that drinking is a way to cope with hardship, but it simply just kicks the can down the line and adds to the hardship, to be honest with you. And that pisses me the fuck off, to be honest, because I would there's so many nights where I'm like, God, I would fucking love to escape this feeling. But there's actually no such thing as escaping a feeling. It's just deferring it to the next day, and then you're hungover, and then everything feels even worse. So I absolutely hate to say it, but that's unfortunately the truth that I learned time and time and time fucking again. I've also seen something with the sober curious movement recently where people are kind of backtracking. And as a believer and a member of Brat Summer, I do feel that it didn't do amazing things for the sober movement. And I loved it. And I'll be honest, I loved it, but I don't love that part of it, because I think we got to a place after COVID when everyone went really fucking crazy with booze that we were like, hey, maybe we should all like dial it back. And then life got so terrible again that we decided to start railing cocaine and going to raves again, which I'm just going to be here to say you can go to a rave without railing cocaine. And it's honestly some of the most fun you'll ever have, watching others rail cocaine when you're sober. It's a blast. It's huge. I mean, couldn't recommend it enough to everyone here. Once you're ready to be in a triggering situation of that nature. But anyways, I saw this girl online talking about how people are less sober curious now than ever. And while I understand that phenomenon based on the state of the world and how atrocious everything is, I also just want to be a voice that is a reminder that it's not solving anything, and if anything, it's making it all worse. And I hate to be the bitch that's saying that, because I used to hate her, but she was right all along. And this is not coming from her. Please hear and know this about me. This isn't coming from a place of health, okay? It's coming from a place of, it's just the unfortunate truth I have found. I could give a fuck. I had McDonald's on the way here. Literally on the way here. I had a crisp Diet Coke and a spicy snack wrap. It's not that for me. But if you're into that, there's also, of course, many benefits to being sober in that regard. For instance, my skin has never been clearer, and also I weigh significantly less than I did when I was drinking, because your bitch was puffy. And we can all look at my TikTok and see those throwback pictures, and I look like a different human being through and through. And I'm still eating McDonald's, and that's still the truth. And I personally think that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. And that's just like my story of hope for everyone today. What else do I want to say about being sober curious? I think we need to we need to go back to it a bit. I think there's many people in my life that I would recommend it to. I won't call them out, but you know who you are. Fucking think about it, okay? But that's my stance on sober curiosity, and also early sobriety, and kind of that mindset shift of sobriety is not a punishment, it's an active choice of bettering your own life. And that concludes our topic section of the evening. And now we're going to move on to Q&A. These are, once again, questions from my faves on TikTok. And these are all going to be... Okay, so the first one is actually... This is a great question. Do I use my sponsor like a therapist? Great question. And I think most people would say no to this because, of course, sponsors are just other alcoholics. They are not trained professionals in any way. But I think it's easy to accidentally do this because there's this concept of a 10th step, which is when you call another alcoholic with something that's pissing you off or upsetting you in your life and get someone else's third-party unbiased opinion on it. And that, I think, is when it's tough to navigate the line between what is the role of a sponsor and what is the role of a therapist. I think you can come to a sponsor with any problem, but you have to understand their role. Their role is to point you back to a recovery-related solution. And also, I think a lot of times a therapist is more in the mental health space in terms of like, how does that make you feel? Where a sponsor is going to be like, what have you done in this? Like, let's think about your part. And that's why it is my personal belief that having both is so important, because sometimes you need to have the accountability that a sponsor affords, and sometimes you need the grace that a therapist would give you. And that's a great way to balance things. Like, I'll run the same situation by my sponsor and by my therapist and get two very different answers, both of which I needed to hear. My therapist is like, yes, girl, that was fucking annoying and you need to set a boundary and da-da-da. And my sponsor's like, right, but what did you do leading up to this? And I'm like, well, okay, seems fucking rude of you to say that and assume I did anything wrong. But usually we will find that I did do something wrong. Anyway, so the answer is no, with an asterisk but that's not really on you to figure out. That's on your sponsor to answer, not like a therapist, if that makes sense. You call that person, male or female, whenever you are struggling, and they will navigate how to answer you. Okay, thank you so much for that question, though. The next one is, at a group once, I was told that you can't have the mentality that you'll never relapse, but I don't like thinking that I would. A bit confusing. Any thoughts? This is a great one, because I remember being at a meeting at one point, and someone was like, you know, someone said, I'll never relapse, and then someone said, well, you can't think that way. And I was like, wait, confusing, because isn't that the whole fucking point of us being here, is that we won't? And the answer that I'm going to give is probably equally as confusing, but my thought on this is like, if I think too much about the future, I will literally panic and die. And that's the whole idea of one day at a time. It's like, I can't know that in 20 years I'm not going to drink. And I can't know that I'm not going to drink in 20 years. Like, there's just no way of knowing. I know that today I'm not going to get fucked up. Like, that's what I can say for certain. And then tomorrow I'll wake up and I'll say that same thing. But if I think too far ahead in a positive or negative way, I'm going to lose my shit and it's not going to be great. So I think there's a lot of things that people say in AA where it's like, well, you can never say that you're not going to relapse because we don't fucking know that. And it's like, actually stop. Like, I don't like your opinion about my circumstance. And they all mean well, but it's like, do what works for you, take what works for you in the program and leave the rest within reason. Like, I think as long as you do the entire program, the surrounding elements, you can kind of take what works for you and leave the rest. And in terms of like those sayings, like, keep it simple. If that resonates with you, take it, great. If it doesn't, leave it. One day at a time, I think everyone can benefit from that. I even like to break it down to, especially in early sobriety, 1 moment, 1 second, 1 hour at a time, because it really was a battle. Thinking about a full day of not drinking when I was starting out was nearly impossible. So I think that just don't listen to people who tell you what mentality to have, maybe. I don't know. That's also dangerous advice to give, because then people would be like, great, I'm not going to fucking do any of it. And it's like, okay, that's not what I fucking meant. But anyways, your heart's in the right spot, and you've been sober for 4 years, so you get it. Great. Okay. Next one is, how do you protect yourself against that first drink? I called my sponsor, prayed, and still drank. Been there, girl, been there. I will say there was many times that I didn't protect myself against the first drink because I didn't fucking know what that meant. And that's a confusing statement that people make. Because the reality, like, I get why they say it. Because I want to be, if I find myself in a triggering situation, I want to have the best chance that I could possibly have. I think right now it looks different than it used to, but I'll speak to maybe earlier in my sobriety. The ways that I protected myself against the first drink was to actively have a finger on the pulse of how I was doing. And that looked like being really involved in a program and involved in a fellowship of other alcoholics, because like I said earlier, they can kind of point out things that you can't see in yourself of like, hey, you're really fucking getting mad about shit that doesn't matter. That's a sign for me. If I start getting really bothered by little shit all the time, I'm not really in a great spot. And I've been in situations where I did all the right things. I called my sponsor, I prayed, I paused, I fucking journaled, I did all the things you're supposed to do, and I still drank. But the reason I still drank is because I had made up my mind well before I even knew that I made up my mind. You know what I mean? Like, if I've made the decision, sometimes calling my sponsor and praying and doing all those things can stop me, but I think it gets harder. I think it's catching yourself before you get to that point. So, like, the moment I'm starting to feel out of sorts, I gotta call someone. But I recently, and I've told this story, I think, on here before, but I recently had an experience where I had a trigger for the first time in probably like a year and a half, and it was really strong. Like, it was probably the closest I've been to saying fuck it in 3 years. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, I think I'm just gonna fucking send it. And then I was like, okay, but let me just tell someone really quick, and just to say that I did, you know. That's not actively what I was thinking, but that's kind of what I was thinking. And I told my boyfriend, who I was with, that I felt that way. And he was like, yeah, I just feel like that would be really crazy if you did that. And I was like, wait, really good point. I was like, wait, actually great point. And for some reason, like, literally just hearing that come out of someone else's mouth, I was like, oh my God, it would be really crazy if I did that. And it just helped. So I think even though those things didn't work that time, it's like continuing to do them, and then also trying to have a better finger on the pulse of how you're doing, like, before it even gets to that point. And sometimes they just come out seemingly out of nowhere. But I always think there's like a slight indication of a problem before the problem like comes to the surface, if that makes sense. Amazing. I think that's a wrap on the Q&A. Thank you everyone for submitting them. I really appreciate it. And if you have one, if that spawned a question, please drop it in the comments, and we'll do it next time. And now we're moving on to one of our favorite, and I purposely thought about this ahead of time this time to make it not repetitive, rock bottom versus pink cloud of the week. Rock bottom, my bank account's in the negatives. Hey, I paid for the snack wrap with coins, and that's why it's really important for you guys to subscribe, because I can't keep fucking living like this. So that's gonna be my rock bottom, but I do get paid tomorrow, so shout out God, I guess. And my pink cloud, you know what it's gonna be, and it's gonna be Taylor Allison Swift. And here she is with us always. Here she is again with us always. Here she is again with us always. She's literally gonna be with us at all times. And also another pink cloud is that I've said on here for the last few weeks that I was feeling pretty anxious and whatever. For whatever reason, I was able to kind of pull myself out of that this weekend, and I feel in much better spirits. So shout out to me, I guess, but really shout out to Taylor Swift. Taylor, if you're listening, I love you so much. Thanks for everything. And that's rock bottom versus pink cloud of the week. Thanks, everyone. Moving on to what we're closing our tabs on this week. What are we letting go of? What are we letting go of? What's not invited into our lives moving forward? I was talking to my therapist about this today. She told me that it's possible that I have imposter syndrome in relationships. And I said, girl, what do you mean? And she said, because I was kind of bringing up this thing where I always feel like a tag along kind of in things where I'm like, I just kind of feel like people have invited me here like out of pity. I think because when, guys, I'm sorry, but when Taylor Swift said, no one wanted to play with me as a little kid, so I've been scheming like a criminal ever since. I said, period. Right? Like, one of the sadder things I've ever heard. And I just feel that wholeheartedly, because I just think of little chunky Bridge on the playground, and ain't nobody ever want to play with her. No one wanted to play with me because I was weird and I wanted to play That's So Raven live action. And that's just kind of like been the theme moving forward, is I drank because I didn't feel a part of things, and I felt like I didn't belong in situations. And now it only really affects like certain relationships in my life, which is confusing. Like with my literal boyfriend of over a year, I'm like, he's literally just penciling me in because he feels bad for me. It's like, wait, hi, that's not how that works. If he didn't want to hang out with me, he probably wouldn't be with me as a partner. But that's hard for me to like conceptualize and accept sometimes. I think I feel like everybody knows every thought and terrible action and terrible thing I've ever done, but the only person that we know the sum of all their bad thoughts and actions is ourselves. So we're so much more critical of ourselves than we are of others because we don't have that information about other people. I know that I'm a piece of shit because I have more data on me than I have on anyone else. And so I'm like, well, clearly you guys didn't do all this fucked up shit, but everybody did. I just don't know about it. And perhaps I'm worse than some, but I really will never have enough information to make that call in a way that is based in logic. So to that I say, I'm closing the tab on feeling like that in relationships. If people are around me, I'm 30 fucking years old almost, it's because they want to be. It's because they want to be around me. It's not because they feel bad for me. That literally doesn't happen anymore. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, that's like actually really sad now that I said it all out. When I was typing, I was like, yes. No, it's terribly devastating, to be honest with you. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for coming to the Sober Sleepover. I really appreciate it. And if you have any suggestions for topics for this one moving forward, I'd love to hear about them. If you have anonymous stories, I would love to hear them. And if you have any questions, of course, we'd like to hear them as well. So put them on my TikTok, put them on this. I think we're going to make it anonymous, like thing where you can actually be anonymous, to send those into. So I'll let you know when that happens. And amazing news, as of today, we're also on Apple and Amazon and Audible. So now I think it's like fair to say most of the places that everyone gets their podcasts, we're there. So that's exciting. And I'll just go ahead and say one more time, please subscribe because fucking my account's in the negatives. And I want my next snack wrap to be on you. I'm just kidding, but like, please. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week with one of our guests. Bye.